Okay, try to picture this. A magnet so huge it could fit 1 million Earths inside it. A magnet whose north and south poles shape our entire solar system. Now, imagine that every decade or so, that colossal magnet just completely flips on its head. This isn't some sci-fi movie plot. It's exactly what's happening with our sun. So let's dive into this amazing stellar mystery. First up, we're going to take a look at the sun's great reversal. It's this cosmic event that has honestly stumped scientists for decades. But as you'll see, some new research is turning pretty much everything we thought we knew upside down. So let's just start with the main mind-blowing fact here. The sun's magnetic poles, north and south, they literally swap places. The North Pole becomes the South Pole, and the South becomes the North. And it does this in a regular, repeating cycle. You can almost think of it as a cosmic reset button, but on an absolutely epic scale. Now, this whole process has a name, of course. It's called a polar field reversal. And it's not like a switch just flips. It's actually a gradual and sometimes kind of messy transition. The old magnetic field at the poles gets weaker and weaker, it vanishes, and then it's replaced by a totally new field with the opposite polarity. And this reversal isn't just some random thing. Nope. It happens right around the peak of each 11-year solar cycle, which means a full flip and then the flop back to where it started takes about 22 years. This is basically the sun's magnetic heartbeat. So what in the world is causing it? Well, for a very long time, the scientific community had a prime suspect for what causes this whole reversal, and it all focused on the most famous feature of the sun, sunspots. Let's take a look at what became the classic theory. For more than 50 years, the leading theory has been something called the Babcock-Layton model. And it basically suggests that the really intense magnetic fields from sunspots are the raw material that builds the new polar fields. I mean, this has been a cornerstone of solar physics for ages. But is it actually right? The theory itself is pretty straightforward. First, you get sunspots. Second, as those sunspots fade away, their magnetic fields get left behind. And third, this leftover magnetic ash, as it's called, gets carried to the poles. It just piles up and up until it's strong enough to trigger the flip. It's a really elegant idea, for sure, but does the evidence actually back it up? And this is where our little detective story starts to get really interesting, because when you take a closer look at the clues from recent solar cycles, well, you start to find some major plot holes in the usual suspect theory. Okay, so the first big problem is all about timing. If sunspots are really the culprit here, you would absolutely expect a direct, clear link between the peak of sunspot activity and when the reversal happens. But when you look at the data, it just doesn't line up. I mean, yeah, the reversal happens around the solar maximum, but there's no clear, predictable connection between the number of sunspots and the actual start and end of the flip. Sometimes it starts before the peak, sometimes it starts after. The direct link just isn't there. And the source paper for this new research is really clear about it. The numbers just don't add up. The count of sunspots, which is really just a measure of local magnetic storms, doesn't seem to be in charge of this massive global event. Now, for the second clue against the old theory, and this one is maybe even more damaging. It's not just that the timing is off. The entire relationship between sunspots and the sun's global magnetic field seems to completely break down during the reversal. So normally you'd think more sunspots means a stronger magnetic field for the whole sun. Makes sense. But during the flip, that connection gets super weak, and sometimes it even goes into reverse. More sunspots are linked to a weaker global field. I mean, that is a huge red flag for the sunspot theory. So this leaves us with a massive question, right? If the magnetic ash from all those sunspots isn't the real culprit, then what other powerful, hidden force is actually in charge of the sun's great magnetic flip-flop? Well, this new research points to a completely different cause. Instead of chaotic sunspots, it suggests there are these vast, super organized flows of magnetism circulating across the entire sun. And this image really illustrates the new idea perfectly. What you're looking at is a map of the sun's magnetic field over time. The red and green show positive and negative polarity, and you can just so clearly see these massive waves of magnetism traveling from one pole all the way to the other. The best way to think about them is as these giant, invisible magnetic rivers. And they're not like plasma flowing on the surface. No, these are successive zones of magnetic dominance that are just shifting across the sun. They're like cosmic conveyor belts, constantly carrying magnetic fields from pole to pole over that 22-year cycle. Okay, so here's how it actually works. First, a new river, let's say it has a positive polarity, arrives at the negative south pole. Second, its positive field cancels out the negative field that was already there. And third, and this is the really key part, that same flow then picks up the old polarity and starts carrying it away on its long journey to the opposite pole. It's like a delivery and a removal service all in one. And the effect these rivers have is just profound. When the sun is at its quietest during a solar minimum, its magnetic field is really orderly, almost striped. Scientists call this a zonal structure. But as these massive flows cross each other near the equator during the reversal, the whole system becomes this chaotic, wavy, sectorial structure. This is the global engine at work, shifting the sun from calm to chaos and then back again. You know, a new theory is great, but its real power is in whether it can predict the future. And this new model, based on these magnetic rivers, it does just that. By tracking the predictable movement of these magnetic rivers, the paper's author was able to create formulas that do something pretty remarkable. They can map the flows, they can accurately predict the timing of the pole flips, and they can even model past cycles with amazing accuracy. And since the flip always happens at the solar maximum, this gives us an incredibly powerful new tool for forecasting the peak of future solar cycles. Now, I know this might all seem like some distant, abstract science, but understanding this solar engine has incredibly important consequences right here on Earth. The sun's magnetic heartbeat directly affects our tech-heavy lives. You see, the sun's maximum, when the field is flipping and all chaotic, that's also when we see the most intense solar flares and coronal mass ejections. So being able to predict these space weather events is absolutely vital for protecting our satellites, our communication networks, our power grids, and especially our astronauts. A better solar forecast really does mean a safer world for all of us. What's really fascinating is that this new model suggests the source of these magnetic rivers might be deep inside the sun, in a region called the Tachocline. It kind of feels like by studying the surface, we've accidentally uncovered a clue to our star's hidden internal engine. And it just makes you wonder, what other secrets are still waiting for us deep inside the sun's engine room?